Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Up in the Air. I'm Lydia Knox, and joining me here is Quinn Leese.
Thanks, Lydia. Since we're both new to Up in the Air, I'm excited to see what we have in store for this year.
As am I. With the fall semester already in full swing, I think we have a lot to look forward to on the show.
Yes. Today we have stories about a cruise ship, a potential planet detected nearby, and a freak lightning incident that struck hundreds of reindeer. Also look forward to our feature on mobile apps and forecast uncertainty.
All sounds interesting. And as always, Mike will stop by later at the Climate Wall with the details on the weather that we can expect for the near future.
We'll have all of that and more coming up, but first, here's Update in the Air.
Astronomers have searched the galaxy far and wide for Earth-like planets where life might exist, but as luck would have it, one was spotted right next door. This newly discovered planet is by far the closest potential livable planet ever detected outside our solar system, and one that could be reached by small space probes before the end of the century. This would enable some people alive today to witness it. They're calling it Proxima b, and it is 4.6 million miles from its red dwarf star, or just 1/20th of the distance between Earth and the Sun, creating an incredible orange sky so it looks like a permanent sunset. And if that's not different enough, the planet circles its star so quickly that its year is about 11 days. Scientists in the past 20 years have found more than 3,000 planets outside our solar system, or exoplanets, and more than 40 of them seem to be in the livable zone just right for life.
Mountain plateaus in southern Norway are popular among tourists and hikers and are known for their natural beauty. As the seasons change, thousands of reindeer migrate across the plateau, moving between drier lands in the east, where they come to graze, and wetter lands in the west, where they breed. But on August 29th, a storm transformed the plateau into a gruesome scene. Lightning appeared to have killed an entire herd, 323 reindeer to be exact, including 70 calves and 5 reindeer that had to be put down because they were severely injured in the storm. The lightning was fierce, and heavy rainfall saturated the ground, which was a good conductor of electricity. The whole group was found dead at the scene, placed as they usually are, huddled into a group. It is inevitable that individual animals from time to time will get killed by lightning. And there are also reported incidents that sheep have been killed in entire groups of 10 or even 20. But we have never seen anything of this magnitude that have happened in Norway.
Without question, heat lightning is one of the most misused weather terms during the summertime. As the summer winds down, many believe heat lightning is produced by hot and humid conditions, lighting up the night sky without any rain or thunder in the immediate area. This assumption is actually entirely false. The flashes of light are indeed lightning, but they come from a distant thunderstorm far enough away that the sound of thunder doesn't travel all the way to your viewing point. You can see lightning from a thunderstorm up to 100 miles away, but unless you're within 10 to 15 miles of the storm, you probably won't hear the thunder. The sound of thunder is refracted through the troposphere because the movement of the sound depends on the temperature and density of the air. Thunder also reflects off the Earth's surface, so between the reflection and refraction, there are areas where the sound of thunder cannot be heard. Although heat lightning is not technically real, it's still impressive to watch and completely safe to do so, since the lightning is actually very far away.
After causing storm surge and flooding rains across the southeastern United States, post-tropical cyclone Hermine rocked Royal Caribbean's Anthem of the Seas cruise ship on its way to Bermuda this past weekend, sending dishes flying and creating a rough ride for those on board. It was noted that the sea swells were up to 40 feet and the wind gusts were up to 90 knots, which roughly translates to 103 miles per hour. The ship planned to divert east of the storm, but the storm went further east than the model suggested, leaving the ship in some of the worst parts of the storm. Anthem of the Seas is the same ship that incurred damage after it was caught up in a storm with 122-mile-per-hour winds off the coast of North Carolina in February. In February, 4 people were actually injured during that same trip.
Storm intensity studies show that North Atlantic hurricanes have grown more destructive in recent decades, but coastal residents' views on the matter depend less on scientific fact and more on their gender, belief in climate change, and recent experience with hurricanes, according to a new study. Respondents' opinions greatly differed depending on whether they were male or female, whether they believed in climate change, and whether they were a Democrat or a Republican. For example, people who believe in climate change were far more likely to realize the increasing violence of storms than those who did not. The researchers noted that because climate change has become a popular political issue, party affiliation also was an indicator of belief in strengthening storms. The study's authors say that this information could help governments and scientists communicate hurricane risk more effectively to the public.
After devastating floods in August, hundreds of thousands of homes were evacuated at a moment's notice, leaving everything behind. This included a magnitude of animals which had nowhere to go. Some areas saw historic flooding, with rivers rising extremely fast. Numerous animal shelters around the country have stepped in and provided support. The help is far-reaching, such as Idaho Humane Society, which is receiving more than 60 dogs rescued from the overcrowded shelters in Louisiana. Animal shelters as far north as Minnesota are also receiving these animals. The hope is that these animals will find a home away from the tragedy that they were unfortunately involved in.
Thanks for tuning back in.
We now have a special feature on mobile apps and forecast uncertainty.
With today's technology, weather information is as readily available as it has ever been.
But despite a wealth of weather resources, the effectiveness of the ways in which we receive this information can be called into question.
Let's think about it. Just in the last decade alone, we have made astounding strides in terms of the availability of weather information.
Of course, we still have the tried and true television and radio, but on top of this, we now have a wealth of smartphone apps, social media platforms, and more, each coming with positives as well as negatives. Let's take this smartphone app, for example. When we look at today's forecast, we see a wealth of information, even broken down hour by hour. But as we go past today's forecast into tomorrow, we're only left with one icon and a high and low temperature. For many days, one icon and a high temperature is all the information you need. However, many in the industry have called the effectiveness of these apps into question, especially in relation to how weather information can be presented on TV.
Those devices are perfect for weather alerts, notifications of severe weather, thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, winter weather information. I also think they give what I call an illusion of accuracy. Somebody picks up an app and it says it's going to rain tomorrow, or it's going to rain. Some of these apps go out, a couple of weeks, and people will think that is correct, and that's not correct. I think as a meteorologist on TV, we add texture to that information.
On top of weather apps, we also have a huge availability of weather information available on social media platforms. And while social media can undoubtedly play a very beneficial role in disseminating weather information, social media platforms have their pitfalls as well.
The downfall is the armchair meteorologist, is the basement forecaster. While some of those people are very good, the majority of them are very, very bad.
Even with the potential pitfalls of any medium through which we receive weather information, it is important to realize that day-to-day weather is one thing, but high-impact weather events are another thing altogether, especially when uncertainty is involved.
Using smartphones apps as an example, it is virtually impossible for the consumer to understand the uncertainty associated with a forecast based on a single icon.
And on top of this, what about potential impacts from the forecast? This is again impossible to discern based on a single icon, and many times from a single tweet as well.
Again, many in the industry recognize the importance of impact-based forecasting and the difficulties that can be associated with displaying these kinds of forecasts.
You know what the people really want to know? Can I drive to work? Are the roads going to be slippery? Where are most of the traffic problems going to happen? So that's where we have really designed our graphics to highlight highest threat area for slippery roads or where you might be impassable. Impact is very, very critical because that's what the people want to know. Can I go to work tomorrow morning? They really, 2 inches, 3 inches, does that really even matter? No.
With all of the available weather resources, each with their own unique set of pros and cons, we are left with one screaming question. Where's the future of weather communication taking us?
And more importantly, does this path coincide with the ways in which we can best communicate the weather?
I think we are going to have to be able to serve, and we're already doing that now, digital platforms, because people are on the go. They want the information on that mobile device. And like I said, TV stations are not on the air with the news. Most of us aren't 24 hours a day. So there's both worlds. We're going to have to service a variety of tentacles that go out to the customer.
Even with the ever-growing list of ways to receive weather information, it appears that the future of weather communication has room for many different platforms, each adding in their own way to our understanding of the forecast.
Ultimately, as a consumer, it is important to realize the pros and the cons of different platforms of weather information and to intuitively make decisions based on the most reliable information available. For Up in the Air, I'm Hunter Williams.
And I'm Christy Stewart.
Welcome back, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed their Labor Day holiday out there. Got some sun. We're joined now with Mike at the Climate Wall. Mike, what's up?
Not a whole lot, Quinn. It's been a pretty good weekend, actually. Pretty dry and pretty warm as well. I went to the football game. I sure hope you did.
Oh, sure did, but had to leave at halftime from that chronic sunburn.
Oh, man, that's a bummer. We really missed a good second half. The team looked pretty good, and they started getting the wheels turning a little bit. However, it's now September, and that means our first fall foliage outlook monitor has been reported now. This came out September 5th of 2016. However, not a whole lot of color change. Actually, no color change on the map at all, because we're very early in September, and the fall is not really kicking into full swing yet. In addition, there's been a drought mostly in Pennsylvania over the past summer, and in addition, we're not going to have peak colors that are going to last very long. We are expected to see, but our upper air pattern for next week, we're expected again large, tall, warm air is going to hover over the East Coast, and a little bit of a trough here in the Rocky Mountains there over Colorado and Wyoming. And that agrees with our temperature outlook for September 13th to the 19th of 2016. Most of the East Coast is going to be pretty warm, and as it gets a little bit less warm as you get further west until you hit the Mississippi. And that's where we're going to be a little bit more below normal temperatures until you get over to the Pacific Northwest, western Oregon, and into Washington State. It's going to be a little bit more warm than we expect. However, transitioning into our precipitation outlook for the same time period, September 13th to the 19th of 2016, most of the East Coast is going to be a little bit more wet, not much. Into Ohio, Indiana, and the southern parts of Michigan, it's going to be a little bit more wet. A little dry spell here in Louisiana and a couple of the surrounding areas that are outside of Louisiana. And in addition, a pretty dry set of air has been settling in. It's going to settle in the Pacific Northwest in addition to the warm temperatures. And going into our drought monitor now, Southern California's drought has still been absolutely terrible, but a lot of the West Coast has been dry, more dry than we usually see, in addition to moving east here in Wyoming and South Dakota. And as we push a little bit even further east, the southeast here in Atlanta, so the surrounding areas have been pretty dry. Atlanta's actually dealing with a pretty darn good drought right now. As long as Pennsylvania, our drought's been pretty severe actually, pretty dry, and in addition to Boston hasn't been a whole wet either. But that's all I have at the Climate Wall. I'll send it back to Lydia and Quinn at the desk.
Thank you, Mike.
That's all we have for this week's episode of Up in the Air. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, please join us next week with a brand new episode of Up in the Air. As for now, I'm Lydia Knox.
And I'm Quinn Leese. We'll join you next week, Up in the Air.